Hello my friends, and welcome to the top 10 weapons in Shadow of the Erdtree. As we jump straight into number 10, the more eagle-eyed among us will notice that this is the same top 10 from the mega list I made last week, ranking every single weapon in the entirety of the DLC. So, the reason for this video is twofold. Firstly, not everyone cares about every single weapon in the game, including all of the real garbage ones, and therefore didn't want to spend 2 hours watching that video, as they'd rather just get to the point and spend 20 minutes checking out the real important information instead, and I totally get that. That is why I wanted to create this video. And on the same vein, some people simply just don't have 2 hours to dedicate to watching a video, so I wanted to provide you with a bite-sized version that's more accessible and easier to watch in small chunks. That being said, if your favourite weapon doesn't make it onto the top 10 and you're curious where it ranks, then if you want you can go back and check out the mega video that I put together to find out my opinion on the rest of the weapons in the DLC. So without further ado, let's jump straight into weapon 10, the Great Katana. Named after the weapon type that it is, the Great Katana is the only of the 3 Great Katanas that is upgraded with smithing stones and can be buffed and infused, making this such a deadly combo for basically any build in the game. Because of the amount of customization options and because of its base scaling, this can fit in pretty much every build in the game. I adore using this with poison affinity with the flower blooms twice because it gives it bleed, poison and rot. So you can quickly proc the poison and then use that with the Ash of War to use up the poison and deal a big burst amount of damage, hopefully then applying the rot. You can then leave the rot on and switch back to using regular attacks to reapply poison and apply bleed. If that doesn't sound ridiculously overpowered to you, I don't know what is. Also, the Great Katana weapon type has an amazing moveset. This is just an all-round top tier weapon, well worthy of going in your arsenal. The second weapon in the top 10 is the Black Steel Great Hammer. You probably already know exactly how much I love this weapon, considering it was the very first build guide I created, and I bang on about it pretty much every other video. This has a unique guard counter, which releases a trail of gold on the ground, dealing additional bonus holy damage a second after the initial hit, meaning this weapon is perfect for big tanky builds. I won't go on about the details and the specifics too much, so if you do want to know the details and the specifics of exactly how strong this can be, go and watch my build guide. You can see me almost no-hitting the Dancing Lion first try. It is truly an absolutely terrifying weapon. And also, because it can be enchanted with magic, because it can be boosted by consumables, and because it can be infused with Ashes of War and have its affinity change, this can fit into practically every single build that you want, making it really versatile and really powerful. Also, please note the Flame Art infusion is definitely the best way to go, because as the weapon states, as it is blessed with an Erdtree incantation, further holy imbuement will amplify the effect and greatly increase the armament's power, and it does just that. Despite the fact that this weapon fits primarily in defensive builds, you can easily get it to over 1000 attack rating. At number 8 we have the Great Sword of Radahn Lord. I've already told you how good the new Great Sword of Radahn is when we covered the light variation, so the only thing I really need to add is that the Lord variation just takes that and makes it so much better by giving it an insanely powerful Ash of War. Throughout the duration of the Promise Consort's 3 input combo, not only will you slash your enemies countless of times, but it will be accompanied by 6 columns of light, meaning you are hitting your enemy 13 times throughout this combo with both of your swords and all of the columns of light. Please note that the light pillars deal holy damage, however they scale off of intelligence, and a full combo will deal 52 stance damage, which is just a ridiculous amount for 1 Ash of War. Yes, it leaves you very vulnerable, and as you can see specifically against the Godskin duo fight here, I'm nearly dying many times, because I am completely disregarding my own life, because I know exactly how much damage this full combo is going to deal. And if you have the survivability to pull it off, you can just spam this against almost every enemy in the game with complete disregard for your own life, because they will die faster than you. It's as simple as that. This weapon is so powerful that for the most part you can just spam L2 and win the game. Next up at number 7, we have got the best great spear in the game. Of course, which other weapon would it be? It is the Spear of the Impaler. It is Messmer's great spear. I could say pretty much all the same things about this weapon's Ash of War that I just said about the Great Sword of Radahn Lord's Ash of War, in that it's a huge combo with 3 consecutive attacks, striking around 10 times throughout its full duration. However, obviously, again, it leaves you very vulnerable to being attacked by enemies that aren't being staggered. But in most situations, that doesn't matter because its damage is so insanely powerful. However, the one thing that gives it a slight edge over the Great Sword of Radahn is its charged strong attack. In fact, the strong, dashing strong, and horseback strong attacks will all throw the spear as a ranged projectile for 0 FP. And unlike the Smithscript spear, the spear will even explode on impact, setting the ground on fire for a short period, dealing even more damage to your enemies, provided they don't move out of the pool of fire. It has an insane amount of range and can be targeted manually and thrown so far to snipe enemies from insane distances. This mechanic gives this weapon loads of utility, meaning it's effective at all ranges. However, please do note, if you do throw this weapon really far away, it is impacted by effective range, so it's not going to deal much damage to enemies if they're really far away, but it's still good at chipping away their health without them being able to do anything to you. And this is great for cheesing many enemies in the game. Because there is so much verticality in the DLC, you can outright kill so many enemies and mini-bosses without them even trying to fight back, by just throwing the Spear of the Impaler at them from a completely different area. It's so fun. And the final weapon before we get into the top 5, just narrowly missing out, though still very powerful, is the Backhand Blade. No, I'm not talking about the weapon type, the Backhand Blade, but the weapon that also shares the name of the weapon type, the Backhand Blade. Yeah, I know, confusing, right? They love to do that in this game. So, the Backhand Blade is the best of the Backhand Blades. It has slightly better scaling and damage than the Smithscript Cirque, and it also has a split between slash and pierce damage, meaning enemies are slightly resistant to some of its attacks, so it's usable in more situations and just far more versatile. Also, it has a longer range, so it effectively does everything that both of the Backhand Cirques do, but better in all categories. The Backhand Blade already is a fantastic category of weapon, and the Backhand Blade weapon itself just does it the best. It's as simple as that. Fantastic weapon category, fantastic weapon. It can be infused, it can be buffed, and due to its very standard scaling, it can be tailored for pretty much every build that you want. But my favourite combination for this weapon is to apply the Cold Affinity, because it gets really decent status build up, and it attacks really fast, so you're going to apply Frostbite on your enemies very quickly. So fast, in fact, as you can see here, the Crucible Knight is about to try and take off, and I managed to Frostbite him mid-flight and knock him out of the sky. Not many weapons attack fast enough to be able to pull off something like that. These weapons are just so fun, and they make you feel like an absolute ninja badass. At number 5, we have got the Ancient Meteoric Ore Greatsword. Initially, this sword appears to be an above-average colossal sword with a really good Ash of War. However, if you dig deep into how the stats work, you start to see that this has a never-ending potential. Firstly, because of how the physical attack and magical attack scaling work on this weapon, along with what actually buffs the Ash of War, it's not initially obvious which stats you should prefer and which talismans you should prefer. So let me give you a few really cool pieces of information. Firstly, you definitely want the Shard of Alexander on with this sword. It's the only talisman that will boost the Ash of War, which is a really good thing because it means you're not then tempted to sacrifice your survivability and your defense to just keep buffing the attack more and more with loads of different talismans. In fact, it's really good to just use the Shard of Alexander and then a bunch of survivability and defensive talismans. Because the White Light Charge Ash of War does such an insane amount of damage as it is anyway, it doesn't need to benefit from many more buffs. And I love that the follow-up attack has an AoE as well. That splash damage is crazy, and you're dealing 3,000 or 4,000 damage to so many enemies in the radius. And this is in the base game. This is without the Scadutree blessing. Yes, I know it's Shadow Tree. I cannot help it. It says Scadu. It just does. Anyway, another amazing thing to know about this weapon, because of how the weapon scaling works on this weapon, it's actually the arcane scaling that affects the physical damage portion of your attack rating the most. Which means this is an incredibly potent weapon which will keep increasing in damage all the way up to pretty much 99 strength and 99 arcane. Meaning it's one of the best weapons that you can bring into New Game Plus, because most weapons are going to plateau at around 60 of any stat. However, this is just going to keep increasing, and it's actually well worth using at really high level builds, because it actually benefits from increasing your stats above the usual hard cap of 60. And to give you some more specifics, despite the fact that it says that the scaling for Arcane isn't that great, it will give you 3 or 4 points of attack rating per level all the way up to 50. And this is fantastic for status effect builds if you then want to pair this with certain spells and other weapons, because as you probably know by now, the more Arcane you have, the more status effect build-up you have. So this synergizes really, really good with status effect builds. So for enemies that are then susceptible to things like Rot, Bleed, and Frost, you have them options available to you. However, enemies that aren't, you can just switch back to just spamming that white light charge and dealing thousands upon thousands of raw damage. It's such a versatile weapon and fits in basically every build in the game, provided you have the strength to use it, because it does have quite a hefty requirement of 35 strength to wield one-handed. At number 4, you have got the wing stance. Sorry, I mean the Milady. Let's be honest. Primarily the reason you wanted to use the Milady is because you saw wing stance from the previews and thought it looked absolutely sick. And my friends, it is as powerful as it looked. This is primarily the only reason to use this weapon, and you don't really need any other reason. Just keep spamming L2, R2, and you will melt both the health and the stance of every single enemy in the game. And its moveset is only enhanced because of the fact that you can mix and match light and heavy attacks. This means that this weapon has a very high skill ceiling, especially for PvP, because certain combos are going to be far more effective than others. However, I'm sure, I have no idea, but I'm sure there must be a video by now on YouTube already of someone testing out all of the different light and heavy combos of the light greatsword moveset. And someone's probably already figured out the best combo for PvP and for PvE. If they have, go check it out and use that. But genuinely, I love just mixing up like light, heavy, light, heavy, light, light. There's just so many really stylish moves, and they are all super strong for so many different situations in the game, meaning you can pretty much counter everything simply with the right affinity, wing stance, and the standard light greatsword moveset. It's so simple, but so effective and deadly. As you can see from this Gideon fight, I died here. That's because I was trying to use the weapon that I've put in the number 2 slot, and it just was not cutting the mustard. So I decided to switch up the footage a bit and use the Milady here instead. And first try, I just wrecked his face. It was insane. He did not stand a chance against the speed and the power of this sword. And in that vein, at number 3 is the Blood Fiends Arm. My god, did this make Malekith easy. Phase 1 of the fight was pretty easy. Phase 2 was literally stupid. So we'll let that play out as I talk to you about why the Blood Fiends Arm is so insanely powerful. People may be saying to me, why have you put this so high up on the list? Didn't it get nerfed recently? It did, and it's still one of the best weapons in the game. Before, it was really overpowered. It was actually broken. Now, it's just one of the best weapons in the game. And you'll find that that's a running theme for the final 3 weapons I have for you today. All 3 of them were previously literally broken, and FromSoft nerfed them. They're still the best weapons in the game. It's just now they are really, really, really powerful but fair, whereas before they were literally imbalanced and broken. And as you've just seen, the Blood Fiends Arm is one such example. When infused with Flame Art or Sacred, it's easily got one of the highest attack ratings in the game. And even though it doesn't have inherent blood loss buildup, its strong attack will cause a spray of blood, which will still cause blood loss on your enemies. Quite a lot, may I add, even if you haven't spec'd it into blood. Which means you don't even really need an Ash of War on this weapon. All you really need to do is give it Sacred or Flame Art Affinity to give it like 1200 attack rating, and then just spam charged heavy attacks, which will trigger bleed on enemies every other hit, and also stagger them every other hit. It's just an absolute beast of a colossal weapon. It's a genuine terror on the battlefield, even post-nerf. And if you did want to spec heavily into bleed and make that bleed even more powerful, you can do so, and its blood loss buildup can still get over 200 even after the nerf. Which I believe is still the most in the entire game. Just a really, really solid weapon in so many situations. Next up, the second best weapon in the game, and this makes me so happy because during my very first preview pre-release video, just after the event I did in the cathedral in Paris, I said, I don't like thrusting shields, I didn't find them very good, and I really hope someone will find a way to make them good. And now, the Carn thrusting shield, I truly believe, is the second best weapon in the whole of the game. By simply holding block and just spamming light attacks, you can easily go toe-to-toe with almost every single enemy in the game, as evidenced by easily wiping the floor with both Godfrey the First Elden Lord and his Phase 2 Hoaraloo Warrior. This boss on my first playthrough was a roadblock for me. He was really, really tough. I probably struggled with him more than any other boss in the game. More than Melania, more than Malekith. And now, with simply poking and prodding at him with a shield, I have trivialized him. The fact that this weapon can be buffed and infused means you can easily tailor it to whatever element the enemy you're currently facing is using, meaning you're even more resistant to it, and you're basically invincible as you're just poking and prodding them until they eventually die. My favourite thing to do with it, as you see here, is apply bleed, because it gets really good scaling, its damage is through the roof, and because it pokes and prods so quickly, you're applying that bleed build-up very, very fast, with well over 100 bleed on every single poke. As you see, I've been wrecking these Armour warriors as well, some of my most hated enemies from the base game. I used to really struggle with these guys as well, and now I can just stand here and poke them to death and take no damage. It's just ridiculous. The Carn thrusting shield is so strong. And again, please note, I am not even tailoring my build to these weapons. I'm not using buffs, I'm not using talismans. This could be so much more insane than what you are seeing in front of you right now. But now, enough stalling. Without further ado, let's discuss the absolute best weapon in the game, as we nearly no-hit Radagon and the Elden Beast with no preparation on the first try, with no attribute-enhancing equipment, with no items, with no buffs. Just the most powerful weapon in the game, and a dream. And that weapon, my friends, is the Fire Knight's Greatsword. This is a drop from all of the Fire Knights that do wield this weapon, so you can easily go and farm this, shouldn't take you long to get one. And my friends, if you liked the Zweihander from the base game, this does everything the Zweihander does, but it turns it up to 100. It's stronger, it's got better scaling, it's got an incredibly awesome moveset. Even after the nerf that has stripped away the light attack into light attack true combo, it still has an incredibly cool moveset. I don't know for sure as I'm not a stat geek, but I believe that it's even slightly quicker than most colossal swords as well, whilst being one of the most powerful. And due to the fact that it also has inherent fire damage and scales reasonably well with 3 different stats, this fits into every single build. And for a colossal sword, it's got really low stat requirements. If you're two-handing it, then the strength goes down to 15 instead of 22. So you only need 15 strength, 18 dex, and 12 faith, and you can wield the best colossal sword in the game. As you see, I've just melted the 2 final bosses with cold infusion, but really, this works with everything. Go mad with it. Put this in every single build. Change this to every single affinity and scaling that you want. It works no matter what you are running. It's just an absolute god tier weapon. And really, there's nothing more I can say about it. It's just incredible. So that's it, my friends. Thank you so much for watching my top 10 melee weapons in Elden Ring. Make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for more, such as ranking all of the ranged weapons and spell casting tools in the game, and for videos on other upcoming Souls-likes, such as Phantom Blade Zero and the #1 most wishlisted game on Steam, Black Myth Wukong. And with that, my friends, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.